Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation on simplifying resource management and project reporting with Project Online. My name's Phil Nguyen and I'm your host today. Joining me, I have Shannon Carey, one of our senior consultants for Project Online, SharePoint and Office 365.
Hello there.
Great. So before we get started, just a bit of housekeeping. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that there is a box for you to put in any questions that you have. We are dedicating 5 minutes at the end of the session to answer these questions. We will also be recording this session and uploading it to our YouTube page. So feel free to take notes, but you will know that you will also receive a link to this afterwards. So I just wanted to start by covering off today's agenda. We will be discussing some typical project management pains. Being a professional services organisation, we've been involved in lots of projects and understand some of the biggest challenges we face today. We will then do a bit of a deeper dive into two that have the biggest impacts on organisations: resource management and project reporting. After that, we'll look at how we've helped organisations with Project Online, and finally we'll answer any questions that you've got remaining. So I just want to start by taking a little bit of a look about resource management pains. One of the biggest concerns in the project management space is how to manage your resources. Everything from aligning resources to the right projects, to making sure the right people are working on the right projects with the correct skill set. It can be an absolute nightmare. Without the visibility into where your resources are and what they're working on, you could end up with things like delayed projects, overloaded risks, bottlenecks in delivery, and not really understanding where your projects are sitting at. The second challenge we've commonly seen in most organisations is reporting. Excel-based, manual, ad hoc reporting can be extremely time-consuming task for project managers, and it doesn't let you have a good visibility over things like project performance, resource utilisation, costs, issues and risks. So I just want to start with a poll that we've got so we can get an idea of where your organisation is sitting. So on your screen now, you should see a question. What tool are you currently using to manage your resources on your project? It can be a combination of project server, project desktop client. You could be using something like a Trello or Basecamp. The kind of traditional methods, Excel, whiteboards, Post-it notes. It could be integrated into your CRM, or it could be something completely separate. So I'll just give you guys a couple of minutes just to fill that out. So I can see some answers coming in already, and looks like there is quite a mixture of organisations. So I'll just give a couple more seconds for us before I close that poll. Okay, great. So looking at this, I can see that a lot of organisations are still using the standard Excel, whiteboard and Post-it notes. I can see some organisations are already using projects, whether it's desktop client or server. I can see some Trello, Basecamp and some other, which brings us a very interesting mix today. Now, we do have another poll for you, and this will give us an idea on where you're at with project reporting. So what statement best describes your organisation's approach on project reporting? Is it available on demand and in real time? And I guess this is the ideal scenario. Are you producing it manually and on a schedule? Or is it only produced manually when it's requested? So I'll give a couple more seconds for all the attendees to answer those questions. Okay, great. So I'm just going to close that and share the results. Okay, so we do have some organisations where it's available on demand in real time, which is fantastic to see. However, we have an even split of how it's produced manually on a schedule and when it's just requested, which makes it very interesting. Okay, so The next thing I want to talk about is Microsoft's report. Microsoft recently commissioned a study to assess the ROI and examine any benefits of deploying a solution like Project Online. I will be sending a link to this report after the webinar, but I do want to share some things that I found really interesting. So in general, these were some of the top priorities for companies introducing a project and portfolio management solution. Just waiting for the screen to load. Sorry about the delay, guys. Okay, great. So in one of our previous webinars, we did an audience poll asking why participants came along to the webinar. And the results shown in the Forrester report are very similar to what we found ourselves, that most organisations want to improve operational efficiency in managing projects. You can also see that gaining visibility into project performance is quite key, and improving business agility and scalability, so being able to have that growth. Improving resource management, well, I think that's a key reason everyone came along today. So now that we have asked organisations that, well, now organisations have realised that they need something a bit more robust, the report asks why Project Online. In the Forrester report, we can see why organisations have selected this as their solution. You can see that reporting, resource management and scalability are key factors in the selection criteria. Again, we know that most organisations we work with are already leveraging Office 365, and it just kind of makes sense to bundle this with Project Online. Now, some other stats I found really interesting, and which have also been proven in some of the work that we've already done. So you can see that improved visibility into project performance reduced project overruns by 5%. We can see that there's also been a 300% returns and ROI produced in less than 7 months.
Geez, well, 300% ROI is pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Now, thanks for going in there, Shannon. I want to introduce Shannon to our audience. So Shannon, I've worked with for the last couple of years, particularly in the Project Online, SharePoint and Office 365 space. His experience kind of goes across government, not-for-profit, academic, private sector organisations. Would you say that's right, Shannon?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And I'll leave the audience in your capable hands.
Thanks, Fung. Hi everyone, my name's Shannon and I've got a pretty good wrap from Fung there. I'll be taking you through a bit of a demonstration on resource management with Project Online today. So for our demo today, I'm going to be using a fictitious company. If you've seen any Microsoft demos before, you may have heard of a company called Contoso. I'll be using the Contoso brand to help us out with our demonstration today. And I would like to jump across into project throughout the slide deck and show you exactly where things can be done and how they match up to the different concepts I'm about to talk about. So to start with, what I want to talk about, we're talking about resourcing with Project Online. Probably the heart of the resourcing in Project Online is the resource center. So essentially, what the resource center is it's a collection of all of the different people within our organization. If you've ever used something like Microsoft Project before, or even if you've been managing your projects on planners or on different spreadsheets or anything like that, you've probably found out for yourself that it becomes very hard to be able to get a view of what somebody's working on across all of their different projects or across all of the projects within the organization. And that's because person Alex, for example, in spreadsheet 1 doesn't match up to Alex in spreadsheet 2, and it becomes really hard to match those people up and figure out what's going on. So the way we fix this with Project Online is we build what we call the resource center, and we can go through and we can enter all of our resources in there. And when we do put resources in there, we can categorize them in a bunch of different ways. You can see on the screen here, I've got a little grouping together of a position role. So you can see all of the accounting people together, the analyst people together, the consultants together. So you can start to group people up and realize where they're from. Not only do you have to do that with roles, you could do that with departments or any other of the key information that you put in against particular people. So I find this really useful, and we're going to be using the people in the resource center today to help us out. In particular, I'd like you to meet our team that we'll be using for today. You'll be able to see at the top of the screen, you can see I've got a little highlight from the resource center of the different people that will be in our project plan, who will be seeing in the reports. Down the bottom, we'll be logging into the system as a few different people and assigning tasks. We'll start out with Lydia Holloway, who's a project manager. We'll go and have a look at a project plan and see how she's over there and how she can go and schedule resources and look at conflicts, etc. We can then have a look at a couple of analysts, maybe Alex and David, how the particular tasks are assigned to them and how we can switch them out. And then we'll be looking at Lynn Robbins, who's actually the resource manager. She's the person in the organisation that's responsible for this team and how the resources are being used on the projects. You have to essentially ask her to be able to do this, to be able to use a particular resource. Now I'm going to show you quite a bit of stuff today. Don't feel like you have to use it all. We have lots of organisations that pick and choose different parts that they use. You don't have to use it all. You can use it all, or you can just choose one part, and we can even integrate with other systems if you have another system doing one of the parts in there as well. So what I'm going to talk about now is I'm going to talk about 3 different concepts. The first one is planning resources. When you're planning a resource, think about that as what resources do I want to use on my project. Maybe it's a 12-month project, maybe it's longer, maybe it's shorter. I have different resources and I'm planning on using all of these resources for this particular time. But when you're planning 6 months ahead or 12 months ahead, you're probably not wanting to commit those resources to the plan at that time. Maybe we finish things earlier, maybe some deadlines get pushed, maybe we change some of the design. When our project becomes flexible, we need to be able to choose when we want to commit the resources to the plan. These resources could be external contractors, or they could be maybe BAU resources if you like. So that's step number 2, committing the resources. So first of all, we plan what resources that we might use over the life of our project. Then we need to commit what resources that we want when we get close to the time. And then finally, it's really useful to be able to track what has actually happened. How did we do when we committed the resources and we planned them? Did we plan them for 8 hours and then they all of a sudden took 16, or vice versa? Did we plan them for 8 and they only took 2? It's really important to be able to track things like budgets as well. So we'll have a look at how we can do these 3 different things. So we'll start off with planning resources. So I've got a couple of graphs to start with to be able to plan resources. I like this one. This is who is busy, how busy is the team/company that we're working in at the moment. This is out of the box. This is a graph that you get with Project Online straight away as soon as you start using it. And what this graph is showing us is it's showing us the different team members. We've got Alex, Lydia and Megan. And you can see that they've got different amounts of hours that they're committed to work. We've asked them, well, we're planning to use Alex and Lydia on the 10th of the 5th for just over 6 hours, and we're looking to use Megan for 8 hours. We can further drill into these little graphs as well if we want to. So this is an Alex report. It shows me how busy Alex is, how much time have we committed to use Alex. We've committed to use him 6.4 hours for every day during the week. But if we bring it back to what I was just talking about before and planning on using Alex versus committing Alex, sometimes we might be able to see that Alex is overcommitted on a particular. We're planning to use Alex for a lot more hours than he actually has available. So these reports can start to help show these sort of things. And I want to show you how this would probably look like on a particular schedule. So in order to do this, I'm going to go into the project desktop client and show you how this works. If you haven't seen project before, that's fine, don't worry. It's very similar to an Excel spreadsheet. You just have lots of different columns and lots of different rows, and you just put in different information such as what the task name is, how many days that task is going to take. You can put a budget in for that, percentage complete, and who a particular task is assigned to. So when we looked at the last chart, we saw that Alex was over allocated on 2 days. He was over allocated on the 16th and the 19th. And what we can see here is I have two different project plans open. And in the top plan, you can see that he's already committed to work, or he's already planning on working the 12th of the 5th to the 1st of the 6th. Then in the bottom plan, you can see that we've scheduled him for 3 days within that time, on the 16th of the 5th, the 19th of the 5th, and that goes over a weekend, so then the 22nd of the 5th. So let's have a look at what happens when Lydia tries to schedule Alex in the catalog publishing project on the bottom. So if I pretend like I'm Lydia now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and open up Microsoft Project. And this is what you'll see in Microsoft Project, very similar to the screenshot. And the first thing I want to point out is I want to point out this first column that you see. It's got a number of different ticks in it. These ticks mean that that particular task has been completed. Now when you look further down, you see some little red men. And if I hover over the red man, that says this task has over-allocated resources. So what I really like about this is as soon as Lydia comes into her project plan and she decides that she wants to start allocating time against people, she can see if they've already been allocated against other projects, and she gets that information straight away. I find that really handy. Now in order for Lydia to say, well, I've got my project plan and I noticed that Alex here has been over allocated, let's put this task to somebody else. So this becomes really easy if we're using Microsoft Project. It'd be nice if we could also see who's got what on. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click up the top here on Resources and then on the Team Planner button. And this shows us a nice little view of who's doing what and where they're over allocated. So we can see that Alex Wilbur has a row here, and he has 3 red boxes around different days. This means he's over allocated on these particular jobs. Down the bottom here we see that we have David Pelton. David Pelton has actually got some time available. He's another analyst on the project. So we want to send some of these tasks across to David. That's quite easy to do. All we need to do is pick that task up with the mouse and then go and drop it down on David. There we go. I've just rescheduled that task to David. When we go back into the Gantt chart view or into the list view, we can see that that's all been sorted out now. There's no red men anymore. That's all corrected. So essentially what we want to do is we can use the Team Planner within Project to reassign the resources. That's how easy it is to fix up our resourcing conflicts and understand where they are. Now the next thing I want to talk about is, okay, now that we've planned to use David as a particular resource on our plan, that's just for next week. We probably want to commit David to that. We want to go to the resource manager, being Lynn, and say, Lynn, can we please get David for this time, and we'll book him in. Maybe he's a consultant that we have to bring in, or maybe he's a BAU resource and we need to take him off BAU work to do this particular project activity. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to use another view in Project called the Assignments view. So all I need to do is go back into Project, and up the top where it says View, I can click on Resource Plan. Now on the resource plan, if I have a look at the plan, you'll be able to see that David Pelton here has been assigned to work on our project for 8 hours on 8 hours on Tuesday, 8 hours on Wednesday, 8 hours on Thursday, 8 hours on Friday, and then 7.6 hours on Monday. So if we want to request that we use this particular gentleman for our project plan, instead of having to write an email to Lynn, what we can do is we can, up the top here, we can click on add engagement within project itself. We don't even have to use leave the tool that we're currently in. We can put a little description for Lynn, needed to reallocate tasks. So that's just a description for us. We can put in a description for Lynn as well. We can then put in a start date for when we want to use David. So we could say we want to use him from Monday and we want to use him through to Friday the 26th. Down below here, we get the option to say how much of David do we want to use. Do we want to use him for 100% of the time? We could then turn it down and say, oh no, I think we only need to use David for 80% if we wanted to. What I'll do in this case is I'll select a work, and that lets me enter how many hours per day that I want David to work for me. I'll click on OK, and then you can see there's a new row that's being inserted into here. What I can do is I can just type in each of the different days, how much I want him for. If you want to make it a little bit easier, you can do a copy and paste. And that says, this is when I want to be able to have David. I'll click on the submit button, and then that will go and send off a request for Lynn to be able to approve David to work on this particular project. I'm going to show you quickly what that looks like. So if I go into Project Online, this is the resource center that we were looking at before. I've now changed from being Lydia, and I'm now Lynn. You can see that up in the top right-hand corner. Now, as Lynn is here, what she can do is she can have a different variety of different views set up for all the different teams or different resources, and she can click on this little resource request button over here. This can also send her an email when a request happens. And what she sees in here is that there's a number of different resources that have been committed for this project, and she sees that David Pelton here is a new request. And Lydia, as a project manager, has proposed to use him, and you can see that information on the right-hand side. What Lynn can do from here is she can tick on this button, and then she can accept that change or reject it, depending upon whether she wants to use him or not. If she clicks accept, then that will go and accept that into the schedule, and that resource is then committed for that much time to that project. Now that we've had a look at committing people to a project, we've looked at planning them and committing them. Now it would be useful to be able to track how we actually went. So there's a few different ways that we can track how a project's going and how those planning and commitments have gone. So think about it this way. I've asked to use David Pelton for 8 hours on Thursday. We then need to find out from David, did you work 8 hours on Thursday? Did you work for 8 hours on this particular task? Did you work more? Did you work less? There's a few different ways that you can understand that information. The first way is that we can get David to enter a timesheet. I'm aware that some organizations don't want to use timesheets or can't use timesheets for various different reasons or have a different system. That's okay. You don't have to use them. But the timesheeting system in Project Online can be very, very effective for this particular purpose and for being able to build all this information. So I'll show you how we can enter a timesheet. There's another section in here called tasks, which you may want to use instead, which allows Alex to say, I've just finished my particular work, or David could say that, and how much time he spent on it. You can get the project manager. A lot of organizations like to have the project manager manage this sort of information. And then some other organizations have other timesheeting programs or other systems where they capture what work is being done. So we can integrate with those sort of systems as well and flow that information through. So entering a timesheet. What I'll do is I'll show you what David would see when he goes to enter his timesheet. Oh, sorry, I might show you Alex. I've got Alex lined up here. So when Alex opens up Project Online, he can click on the Timesheets button, and being Thursday today, he hasn't finished his work. He's a good resource, and he's actually gone through and filled in what he's done prior to today. What I really like about Project Online is that if you're a resource filling in a timesheet, you'll be able to see that if you've already got a task assigned to you for a certain amount of hours, that can be pre-populated into your timesheet for you. That means that for people like me who can be a little bit lazy and do their timesheets later on in the week, it's easy to see what I was working on the different days. So you can see here, Thursday, David's done 6.4 hours. Let's say that he spent, or Alex has done 6.4 hours. Let's say he spent 8 hours. He just puts 8 in the actual. On Friday, let's say that he worked another 8 hours on the same task, or let's say he worked 6 hours and then 2 hours he was sick. You can put that information in as well. This system can also capture things like overtime and bits and pieces like that. So it can do that as well. And once he's done with this particular timesheet, he can turn it in as a final timesheet, and that can go off as approval. Now, if you don't want to do a timesheet, what you can do is you can look at a task view. So if David looks at tasks instead, what that looks like is you can see over here on the left-hand side, these are all of the tasks that David's been assigned to. There's two ways he can work from here. One way is deploy software, is the task that we were looking at before. He can say how many hours he's got remaining on the task. Let's say he only has no hours left, and let's say that he's finished working on this particular task. It means he's done 100 hours. Then what that does is that can then go and update the system as well to let him know, to let the system know how that task has been complete or how that's working. He can track on an individual day if he wants to. There are some nice views that I like in here as well for Alex. If I click on the calendar view, what that will do is that will open up a nice little calendar, and it will show you where Alex has been scheduled to work on the project, or all of the different projects he's meant to work on. And then finally, after tasks, Lydia, as the project manager, she could do these updates. She could either sit down with him and do the updates, or during a scheduled project meeting, we could update all of the different tasks. So you can see here I've highlighted the different tasks. Line number 18 and line number 20 are the ones that David was working on. You could simply put in David has worked on this particular task all last week, which would be 40 hours. You could type that information in there and put a % complete. What I find really interesting about this as well is you can do budgeting. You can actually put a budget in for how much it costs to use someone like Alex, and then that will come up with an actual cost, which will help understand how you're running for budget for these particular resources. Now that we've gone in and we've looked at those 3 different sections, we've looked at planning resources, committing resources, and then tracking how the resources have gone. Let's have a look how we can get some of that information out of the system. One of the ways I like to pull that information out is using a tool called Power BI. So I've created a couple of reports on this data that we have, that we've entered in today, and I want to show you how this will look. It didn't take me very long to create these reports. It probably took a couple of hours. And what I find when I work with different customers is once I've set up the data sources and the data model underneath the scenes, I'll go through and I'll set up a number of reports to show them what can be done. And we do some investigation on what they need, and we'll set that up. But I often find, because Power BI is such an easy tool to use, customers will go through and they'll go and create lots of different reports themselves. They'll go through and they'll change it all. And they'll get information out. It's really quite simple to use. And so this is a time utilization report. And some things I'd like to point out on this report You can see up the top there's a little bit of a description about what's going on. Underneath that there's a nice little graph that shows you where the non-billable time has gone. So administration work, annual leave, sick leave, that sort of stuff. You can start to understand where a lot of your time as an organisation is going there. Then below that you can see lots of other things like where all the different employees are spending their different times, which departments are spending the most amount of time. And then you can have some nice little filters. I really want to show you how that works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go into the Power BI desktop version. I often show this in the web browser. It works just the same in the web browser as it does here in the desktop version. So here's the same report. Now what I can do if I like, we were looking at two different analysts today. We were looking at Alex and we were looking at David. If I click on the analyst button, what this does is we're able to actually narrow down the information based on all the analysts in the organization. So you can see when I clicked on that, it changed quite a bit, and we only have 3 categories for non-billable time now. If I turn that off, then you can see that there's quite a lot more. And you can see what projects are being worked on as well. The print advertising campaign, the health assessment reporting tool, the dynamic CRM deployment. If you have a look, the pie chart on the left-hand side breaks it down even further to more of a task type of level and see what people are working on. If I wanted to with this report, I can also go and select somebody like Alex, and it will show me a report just for Alex. So we can see that Alex has spent time at conference and on administration activities pretty evenly. And then he's working on 2 different projects, the print advertising campaign and the CRM upgrade. You can also use both of these particular selectors together, so you can select multiple things at the same time. And you can use the graph to be able to select things down as well, which I find really nice. So that's about time utilization. You can see here how it becomes very easy to be able to understand who's doing what within the organization, what projects, what's taking up the most amount of time, which department. There's loads of other items that we could add into here. I just wanted to give you a bit of a sneak peek at what you could do. The second one here is the next 2 weeks worth of work. I find this to be quite useful. Now this is more about planning. If you're a business manager or a team leader, you want to know how much work your team has coming up. So earlier on what we talked about was we talked about the planned work and we talked about the committed work. You can see here on the left-hand side we have the planned work. You can see that Alex has got 120 hours of planned work within the next 2 weeks. But you can see we haven't actually committed him to anything. Either the customer hasn't signed off or we haven't got okay from the team lead to put him onto that project. David, on the other hand, we've committed him to 24 hours. So I find that to be quite useful. Up the top you can see a little bar chart that shows this sort of information as well. What I can do is I can narrow it down to a particular project. If I click on the catalog publishing project, you can see that, oh, hang on a second, that only 24 hours of Alex's time is planned for the catalog processing, the catalog project. The other stuff must be coming from some of the other projects. So it's quite a nice way to be able to view that. And we can also do that based on a position role like we spoke about before, or we could do that on a particular project level. So we can get some quite useful reports out of this and interactive reports really easily and really quickly. If there are other dynamics that you use in your organization to understand or to classify or categorize things, such as maybe a discipline, we can add those sort of information in as well. There is a lot of reporting that we can do within Project Online. Some of the other reports that I thought I'd mention just to whet your appetite a little bit more is planned work versus actual work for the resource that was assigned. So this one's about, did we estimate it right now that Alex has finished his particular task? we estimated 6 hours. Was it 12 hours or was it only 3 hours? Percentage complete versus time used. Are we going to run over on the particular task? Does this mean, well, have we used 90% of the budget but it's only 10% complete? If that is, we can start to highlight that, pick that up, and maybe add resources or change resources at that particular stage. Budget versus budget spent. Do we have enough budget left to resource the remainder of the project? This is a big one. People like to know that they're not going to go over budget and get some pretty good estimates out of the system to be able to understand this information. Work in progress report I often get asked for. This might be if you've got a consultant and they've done 80% of a billable task, but you're not allowed to bill it till you've hit 100%. Then that means that you've probably spent time and money doing something and you're entitled to some money, but you just can't bill for it yet. How much is there? So there's a long, long list of different things that we can do with reporting. I'd love to have a chat to you, or we would love to have a chat to you about how we can help you out with that sort of stuff as well. So that brings me to the demo.
That looks fantastic. I really enjoyed seeing those reports in real time, and it was just great to see really how automated it was. I mean, looking at the audience, there were 82% of the audience were producing these reports ad hoc and manually. Imagine if you had something like this in place where you could just click a couple buttons and there it is for you.
That's the one.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Shannon. Your next question will probably be, Fung, this looks great, but how much is this actually going to set me back? As you can see, going back to Shannon's personas, you can see Alex, he actions project tasks and puts in timesheets. He didn't need to do any scheduling, and he would generally fall in line with the Project Online Essentials, which is about $10 per user per month. Now, remember Lydia? She was the project manager. She created schedules, assigned resources, resolved scheduling conflicts. Her profile would align well with a Project Online Professional, which is $42 a month. Then finally you had Lynn. Now there won't be too many Lynns in every organisation, but she would suit the Project Online Premium profile. She's the one that approves the resourcing and looks after the enterprise resource management side of things. This should give you a rough idea on how much your organisation will actually spend in licensing. So now that you've got an idea on pricing, I want to talk about how we've actually helped our customers. The first example I want to take you through is a project management firm. When we started working with these guys, they were an organisation of about 25 people. They worked via a massive spreadsheet tied to multiple projects and vendors, and this was all happening simultaneously. They really struggled to track time, and because everything was managed and entered manually into a spreadsheet, they really struggled to track the errors. They couldn't scale up because all the systems and processes in place had already reached its capacity. We started this project with implementing a timesheet management and task management solution. Shannon, I think you were the one who did the majority of work on this one.
I had a bit of help from the rest of the team too.
Good to hear. Once all the staff had started putting in their timesheets, management and directors could then report on things like time spent on certain tasks, non-billable activity, how much time was spent on travel, what impact this was having on the project, any delays and bottlenecks, which resources were being overutilised. So a lot of the reports that Shannon had showed you earlier. This project has now evolved, and it's now included their customers who log into Project Online to approve the timesheets. This also meant that they were able to automate things, so things like project billing milestones. And in one instance, there was about 130K worth of work that was unbilled. Now, if they were already using Project Online, this would have been prevented. And you can imagine the impact of 130K on the cash flow of a small organisation. Because they were able to implement the right systems and processes, within 6 months of implementing Project Online, they've actually grown quite dramatically. So they've scaled up from about 25 staff to 90. Now you can imagine how happy the directors would be with seeing that visibility of what their team are actually doing and how they've actually grown. The second story I wanted to talk you through is a manufacturing organisation. So this is an organisation where there was a lot of work around new product development. There were lots of spreadsheets and emails, all the tasks were tracked by emails, and there were about 100 different forms for developing one new product, which meant that there was no single source of truth. There were lots of procedural and data integrity issues, as you can probably imagine. We started this project by removing some of the manual tasks and creating a single source of truth. Linking Azure App Services to host 100 plus forms and linking that to Projects Online meant that project managers can see and track their resources and their tasks. We could automate a lot of that manual workflow and those approvals, and we can generate the reports in real time for the project management office and the exec team. So now that you've seen how we've helped some organisations and how they've actually benefited from Projects Online, the next question is, where does your journey start? Every organisation is at a different spot, whether or not it's selecting if Projects Online is the right platform for you. In some instances, it's not. Projects Online, your organisation, depending on what your requirements are, may be suited something more like SharePoint and a couple of project templates. After you've seen what the right fit is, it's now getting that exec buy-in and getting all those stakeholders heavily invested in that and presenting the business case. We can then help with the solution design down to the configure, the deployment, go live, ongoing support. One thing I do want to highlight, and that's quite critical to every organisation, is managing that change process. It's quite critical to get all your stakeholders engaged in the project, getting that end user adoption and getting everyone wanting that change and wanting to grow the organisation. So now that you've seen how we can help you and what stage of the journey you're at, we are offering attendees on this webinar a 1-hour free consultation. After we exit the webinar, there will be a pop-up box which will ask you 2 questions. One of the questions will be if you'd like to sign up for the free 1-hour consultation, which I do suggest you take us up on that. So we've got a couple minutes left. I want to just start by going through some questions. So if you haven't already, please enter in your questions. So the first one I have is, do I have to use all the features you've shown today or just some?
Do you want me to answer that one, Phil?
Sure.
Yep, okay. So everything that you've seen today, you don't need to use it all. You can use bits and pieces of it, what suits your organisation. Every organisation is different, so we can definitely come out and help you, and maybe if you're just interested in some of the reporting stuff, we can do that, or maybe just some of the planning stuff, we can do that. Definitely we can use different bits and pieces from the project online.
Okay, great. Can we bill clients through Project Online?
You can do billing. We do have customers that do bill from Project Online. Essentially, we had to build a little module that sits on the side, but it can look at when tasks are complete or look at how much work a resource has done, and we can actually integrate that with your billing system, whatever that might be.
Okay, great. Can this integrate with other reporting products?
Yes, absolutely we can. So we've got different customers using other products like QuickView, and you can actually go and pull out big, rich reports like this. If you've already got some sort of reporting platform, then you can use that if you like.
Okay, and I think we've got time for one more final question. Can this work without Office 365?
Well, part of it can, but you're gonna not get a lot of the rich reporting and all of that sort of stuff. You can use the desktop client as a project manager, or you can go through and do some spreadsheets to do some analysis type thing. But to get all of the good features, you need to have Project Online.
Okay, great. Well, that brings us probably to about time right now. So I want to thank everybody for attending, and please remember to tick in the 1 hour free consultation in the pop-up box. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.